Started.
Good. Hi everyone, my name is Dave O'Sullivan. I am the Student Budgetary Advisor with the Student Financial Support and Advice Office here in UCC. So I'm here today to talk to you about funding options and financial support for postgraduate study. So here's just a brief overview of what we'll be looking at today. So we will discuss your fees, the funding options that are available like SUSI, Department of Social Protection payments, loans, the Student Assistance Fund. We'll take a look at some scholarships and bursaries, and then just a few points on the some recent measures from the budget that just came out. And then we will look at the services that our own office offers and how you can avail of them. So, when it comes to fees, if you are an Irish citizen or from within the EU or the European Economic Area, then the average annual tuition fee that you're looking at for a postgraduate program would be roughly between 4,000 and 10,000 euros for the year. Now, there is quite a bit of a variance in that, depending on the program you're looking at or the institution you're looking at, but that's kind of a rough idea of it. Generally speaking, fees are paid in 2 installments. You can pay it in 1 installment if you wish, but generally by default it's 2. But if that's not manageable for students, they can opt to set up a payment plan where they pay the fee monthly between September and April. Payment plans must be applied for each year, so for any student who's looking at maybe a multi-year postgraduate program, it won't just roll on year to year. You'll need to log into your student portal every September and set up that process. Here on this website, if you want to take a quick picture of that link, that is the full fee schedule for postgraduate and PhD fees for the coming academic year 2025-26. Now again, those fees are subject to change, so for any student who's looking at a multi-year program, your fees may potentially go up as you progress through the program. This is the contact details for the fees office. Again, something you might most want to take a quick picture of if you have a camera on you, because obviously they are the best people to talk to if you have any queries specifically about fees. So you can reach them like in person, call them to the office, call them up on the phone. I believe there's a capacity to book an appointment as well if you have maybe a lengthier query. So, the types of financial supports that are out there for postgraduate students. As you can see, there's quite a few options. There's the your own income from employment, assistance from parents or guardians, the Student Universal Grant, scholarships, Department of Social Protection payments, the Student Assistance Fund, various forms of bursaries and awards that we'll look at. And we'll look at a few of these in more detail now. So, Student Universal Support Ireland, or the SUSI grant. That's the principal one that students will be accessing in third level education. Most of you will be aware of it, I guess, but there are just a few caveats about funding for postgraduate programs in particular that you might want to be aware of, so we'll look at those now. So, for a postgraduate course, you may qualify for a fee contribution of €5,000 or a fee grant of up to €6,270 to fund the fees of your program. You may also qualify for a maintenance grant along with that, which will help with cost of living expenses throughout your time in the program. To receive the maximum funding, that's the special rate of the grant, you have to hit a number of qualifying criteria. They include that you must qualify obviously for the ordinary rate of the grant in the first instance. Your total reckonable income must not exceed €27,400 in the assessable year. So for applicants coming in next year, that would be 2024. And on the 31st of December of the previous year of your application, so December just gone, your household income would need to have included a eligible long-term social welfare payment. Now that's just for the special rate of the grant. Obviously there are other lower rates of the grant that might be more accessible to applicants. If you're awarded the SUSI payment, the payment of fees will be done directly between SUSI and the fees office. So just the fee portion of any award you get from SUSI, you don't need to worry about it. It's handled directly between SUSI and UCC. Just to note as well, if you're in receipt of any kind of scholarship or bursary that's going to help pay your fees or fund your research, this may impact your assessment with SUSI as well. So just bear that in mind. So there's a number of ways that we can assist you with engaging with SUSI. So perhaps you've applied and you feel you've been unfairly assessed, or maybe the income they looked at isn't an accurate picture of where your income is at the moment. Then you can come to us and we can help you have your assessment reviewed and potentially appealed. Or perhaps, let's say you're progressing through your studies and you find you need to repeat a year due to some exceptional circumstances like illness or some unfortunate challenge that you faced during your time. We can help you navigate that process as well in engaging with SUSI. And also, in certain cases, we can act as a direct contact between yourselves and SUSI, so we can engage with them on your behalf. Just to mention as well, SUSI will be opening for applications in spring 2025. There's no exact date yet, but it's typically around March or April. Back to education allowance. This is a Department of Social Protection payment. It's to support people getting a social welfare payment to access second level, third level education, and in limited cases, postgraduate courses. You must meet certain criteria to qualify for the back to education allowance, and all new claims must be recommended and approved by a Department of Social Protection case officer before you start the course. You may get the back to education allowance for a postgraduate course of study that leads to a higher diploma in any discipline, but for a master's level qualification, it needs to be the professional master's in education. You will not get back to education if you already have a postgraduate qualification unless it happens to have been a springboard course. Generally, you would need to be over 24 years of age to qualify for back to education for a postgraduate course and have been getting a qualifying social welfare payment. You must always be accepted onto your the qualifying course, of course, to have the payment approved. This is a list of the qualifying social welfare payments. Like the principal ones would be job seekers allowance, disability allowance, carers allowance, one parent family payment, but as you can see there's a much longer list that some of you may be eligible for. For third level courses, you would need to have been getting the social welfare payment for 9 months prior to entry onto your course. But for postgraduate courses or the professional masters in education anyway, you would need to have been getting that payment for 12 months prior to entry onto the course. And you must have been getting that payment immediately before you start the course to receive the back to education allowance when you're throughout your time in study. Just a couple of other quick notes about it. If you're awarded a back to education payment, you will not be eligible for SUSI maintenance. But that's okay because it's a much more lucrative support, so it's definitely the one that you want to pick really in most cases. But having said that, you would still want to apply for SUSI if you're getting back to education allowance, because SUSI then would help you support you with a fee payment rather than a maintenance payment. If you're awarded the back to education, you will continue to get your previous entitlements. So let's say you were getting a fuel allowance or travel allowance, medical card. With your previous social welfare payment, you'll still get those throughout your time in college then. You can work part-time while you're in college and getting back to education, but it's a means tested payment, so whatever earnings you get may impact the rate you receive through the allowance as well. So just bear that in mind. Loans. These are from financial institutions, and there's quite a lot of facts and figures here in these, so don't worry too much about taking them all down. The information's all readily available online through the various institutions we're going to talk about, but we'll just go through them briefly here anyway. So the Bank of Ireland, they offer a dedicated postgraduate loan at a discounted interest rate of 5.6%. It's got flexible payment options that you can choose to repay weekly or monthly. The maximum loan amount is up to €10,000, and you can choose to repay that loan between 1 and 5 years. The option is there, no problem, to defer the first 12 months of payments if you wish, and there are no penalties if you decide to make extra payments to that loan over any point in the lifetime of it. There's no setup fees. To be eligible for it, the postgraduate loan, you need to be undertaking a 1-year full-time program within the Republic of Ireland. It's open to existing Bank of customers only who have already a third level account, and the loan is designed to cover fees, and the loan does not have a top-up facility. So if you decide to progress through your studies onto a further program, or for some reason you need to repeat the year or whatever, then you may need to look at alternative funding options if you've availed of this loan. AIB also have a education loan that you can avail of. It's got a student interest rate of 8.15%, so a bit higher than the Bank of Ireland loan. You can borrow between 600 and up to 50,000, so it's more option there for coverage. But you have to have a Student Plus account with AIB to avail of that. Again, the loan is payable from 1 to 5 years, and it's for any full-time students who have limited income, would probably need a guarantor to co-sign the loan with them, such as a parent or guardian. There are no penalties, again, if you decide to make extra payments outside of term time. So just for comparison between the two institutions, say a typical €1,500 1-year loan with a variable interest rate from AIB, that'll be up to 8.5% in interest, would have 12 monthly payments of €130.16, and the total cost of credit, so the sum you'd pay back in addition to the loan, would be €64.63. For Bank of Ireland, that same loan, €1,500 paid back over 1 year, would have 12 payments of €128.73, and the total cost of the credit there would be €44.74. So you can see the Bank of Ireland loan is quite a bit cheaper, and as you ramp up those figures, because obviously you may well need to take out more than €1,500, the cost of that credit could, the difference in the cost of that credit could increase significantly. Credit unions offer education loans as well, but where they differ is that credit unions are independent of each other, so there's no fixed interest rates between the whole group around the country. You have to apply locally to your local credit union. The average interest rate was found to be about 7.63%, and to access those loans you need to be a credit union member. You may need a guarantor, and again, similar to Bank of Ireland and AIB, they would have flexible payment options that you could choose to repay weekly or monthly. The maximum loan again is up to €75,000, so again there's some flexibility there, but that depends on the specific credit union you're applying to. And again, you can choose to repay that for between 1 and 5 years. The Student Assistance Fund. The Student Assistance Fund is administered here locally within UCC, and the difference between this and what we might have been discussing previously is those previous supports that we were looking at were really intended for your fees. The Student Assistance Fund is something that you would access while you're in college and is more intended for cost of living. It provides financial assistance to full-time higher education students who are experiencing financial difficulties whilst attending college. The fund is part supported by the Irish Government and the European Social Fund as part of the ESF Programme for Employability and Inclusion and Learning, and the Student Assistance Fund provides a further source of funding for higher education students in addition to the student grant, or SUSI, which we mentioned previously. Who can apply? All full-time registered students subject to EU status, so basically EU citizens or from within the European Economic Area, can apply, provided they're in a full-time programme, both undergraduate and postgraduate. So you can all avail of that. The students participating in foundation courses or part-time courses are not eligible to apply for the fund, but if you're looking at taking a part-time postgraduate course, there is the Financial Aid Fund, which has similar principles that you can apply for instead. You are not eligible to apply for the Student Assistance Fund if you're pursuing a second degree or master's at the same level. So if this is your second master's qualification, if you have a postgraduate already, then you may not be eligible to apply for it this year or for the coming year. Students may be supported for 1 repeat year, so if you need to repeat the year of your postgraduate, you can still apply for the Student Assistance Fund. And PhD students will be supported for 1 to 4 years of their PhD program, but they won't receive funding for a 5th year or any further years after that. So when you're applying to the Student Assistance Fund, we will look at your household income in as much the same way that Susie would. So we would look at salaries, wages, income from rent, pensions, self-employment, farming, social welfare payments. We also look at the whole household income. So where applicable, that could include parents or guardians or partners and spouses. An applicant must provide all the relevant documentation for their financial situation in line with the college guidelines for their application to be fully assessed and completed. The documents you need could be quite varied. If you're getting Susie, then we just ask you to submit your Susie Award letter, which will contain all the details of their financial assessment. So it's very straightforward. You just send in a copy of that letter, and then we'll base our own assessment off Susie's information. But if you're not getting Susie, then we'd ask you for kind of a variety of different documents depending on your own situation. So they could include, say, a statement of liability for any income from employment, a notice of assessment or self-assessment, and Form 11A for income from self-employment or farming, and then a social welfare statement if your household was in receipt of any kind of social welfare benefits throughout the assessable year. But don't worry too much about keeping track of all this information. When you apply to the fund online, it'll be made very clear to you what documents are required for your own particular situation, and we'll even go into steps about how you can access those documents yourself. The fund typically opens in early to mid-September. The financial aid fund, which I also mentioned, which is for part-time students, that opens later, typically in November. But all students across the university are notified before both funds open. You'll be sent a detailed information about when the fund is going to open exactly and provided with a link to the application form. So just keep an eye on your emails at the start of the academic year for more information on that. Scholarships. There's just some information to keep in mind about these. So many postgraduate research students have secured funding to pay for their scholarships. And some of these scholarships may also include some kind of measure to help with cost of living costs as well. These are generally offered on a competitive basis between academic or maybe athletic performance or something like that. If you're planning to undertake a research qualification in UCC, you should talk to your potential supervisor about funding options that are specific to your own discipline, because there's a lot of different stipends and bursaries out there that students can avail of, so it's really important to talk to someone who's in that discipline to find out the ones that would be specific and best suited to yourself. If you don't have a supervisor in mind yet, then you can explore the UCC's database of academic staff to find someone in the area you're interested in studying, and then reach out to them, and hopefully they'll be able to help you get some useful information. There's a lot of different organizations that offer postgraduate research funding. These include some of the ones listed here, but this isn't a full list, obviously, but there could be state bodies, charities, private organizations like the Irish Research Council, Irish Cancer Society, Science Foundation Ireland, the Environmental Protection Agency. Funding may also be available from private companies and supported by schemes to incentivise private investment in postgraduate research, such as the Irish Research Council and employability-based postgraduate programs. This is the UCC website on scholarships and prizes. It contains a pretty extensive list of the options you'll be looking at. So I'd encourage you all, if you're interested in pursuing a scholarship or prize, to have a look at this particular website. UCC offers thousands of bursaries each year in partnership with donors with different disciplines. And again, these are offered in response to academic performance, achievements in athleticism, community activities, or even just in recognition of particular challenges that each student might face. So it's definitely worth exploring that website. That QR code will take you to a copy of our complete guide to funding your postgraduate study at UCC. So it might be worth, again, just taking note of that code there and having the document on file to read through it in your own time. It contains a lot of useful information that anyone really considering a postgraduate here should have a quick read through if they can. Budget. There was a couple of quick points just to go over from the budget just late last year that came out that will affect particularly students going into postgraduate programs and then also more widely. For SUSI, the SUSI special rate of maintenance grant income threshold will increase to 27,400. So I think it was previously about 26,000. So that's a nice increase for anyone who might be kind of in that ballpark. Also, the income threshold for maintenance grants for postgraduate students will increase by 15%. So again, the maintenance grant is the fund that they give you to help you with cost of living throughout the year rather than the fund they give to the university to pay your fees. The postgraduate fee contribution income threshold will increase to 64,000. So previously, there was a cap of, I think it was maybe 55,000 or so, which you wouldn't get any funding for your postgraduate fees if your household income was over that. But now that figure has gone up to 64,315. And the first 5,000 of any scholarship or bursary that any of you might be receiving will be completely disregarded by SUSI's income calculation. So it'll play no part in your assessment if you are getting a fund of up to 5,000 euros. And then more generally, there's been an increase in the minimum wage for 13 to 13 euros and 50 cents per hour. Here are some useful links that you can keep in mind. So the SUSI website up the top, that's probably the most important one. Like I said, the application window is going to open sometime in spring, so in a couple of months' time. So it would definitely be worth your while having a look at that website and getting familiar with it in advance of the application window opening. Not that there's any rush, there's loads of time to apply, but it's better to know where you're at with it and get your application in earlier rather than later. The Citizens Information and Welfare.ie, that would contain a lot of information about social welfare payments and entitlements. So again, it's a useful resource. This fourth one here, that's the Student Financial Supports and Advice Office, our own office. So anything to do with staff, budgeting, emergency supports. It's a good one to know for when you are here as a student after you've registered. And spunout.ie is just generally a good website to look at. It has a lot of useful information just about student life generally. That is it. Thank you very much for your time. These are my own contact details. That QR code is my appointment booking link. So if you have any questions about anything we talked about today or anything else related to student finance over the next few months, or indeed when you're here as a student, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to talk to any of you about any queries you might have, and I'd be delighted to help you in any way that I can. Thank you very much.